How's it going, everybody? Landon with the Truck Boss Show. Thank you so much for joining us on this special segment of our Truck Boss Show. Honored to be next to my friend, someone I've gotten to know a lot. We've done a lot on the show, Miss Andrea Marks, Director of Communication for Trucker Nation. Andrea, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I have to say you look much better than I do, so let that be known. But we're diving into a very important topic here. We only have a few minutes. I wish we had 15, 30 minutes, but there are important things that are happening that may be overlooked because everybody's paying attention to hours of service. And now they're missing out on opportunities where their voice can be heard. So there are several open comment threads that are happening right now in the Federal Register that drivers, those stakeholders in the industry need to be engaged in. So without further ado, can you share those four, a brief description, and the time frame by which their voice can be heard?
Yeah, so thanks again for having me, Landon, and thanks for taking the time to bring light to these issues that maybe people are not necessarily aware of. And you're right. I think everyone is just waiting with bated breath for hours of service to come out. But in the meantime, there are just some really, really important issues out there that we hear drivers complain about, or we hear drivers have really awesome conversations or ideas in regard to, but we need to ensure that that's translating over to a place where those types of conversations and ideas can be used to move the regulatory dial. So there are four public comment periods that are open right now. The first one is a public comment period that is asking if the FMCSA should engage in another pilot program that would allow drivers that are under 21 years old without military experience to engage in interstate commerce. So this comment period is actually only open until July 15th.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's right around the corner. That's Monday. There's not many comments on it right now. And this is really just a conversation starter. This is non-rulemaking. This is the agency saying, hey, should we consider doing a pilot program? This is not to be confused with the pilot program for drivers that are under 21 with military experience. They're looking at expanding the scope. So that comment period closes very soon, and I would encourage drivers to go make a comment today.
Absolutely. Number two.
So number two is the comment period that's open in regard to automated driving systems or autonomous vehicles. The agency is asking about testing these autonomous vehicles out on public roadways, and that comment period is set to close on July 29th. So we have a little bit longer, the end of the month, and there has been an extension, a request for an extension on that particular comment period, but we have seen the agency be a little stingy with awarding those because they want to ensure that they're staying with their progressive approach to getting these comment periods opened and closed quickly. So I would encourage drivers, if they have ideas, and we all know that drivers have something to say about autonomous vehicles, to go and make a comment before July 29th.
Yes, on the Truck Boss Show here and around the nation, we've talked to those who favor it and are very um, grateful for how companies are going about the technology and rolling it out in the industry. And it goes the other way, those who feel it's going to take all the jobs away and go to the far extreme. So here, getting their voice heard is extremely important. At the end of the month, get that done. What's number three?
Number three is a request for information concerning detention times. Now, I know there is not a driver out there, maybe some livestock haulers, but that aside, there's not a driver out there that has not experienced issues with detention time. This is an issue that has been, my words, exploited by the implementation of ELDs and the exploitation of hours of service. There are driver forums out there that are dedicated to talking about detention times. You could ask any driver out there, what is your worst experience sitting at a dock waiting to be loaded or unloaded? And they wouldn't hesitate 1 second to tell you that nightmare story that they have. Now, there are some very specific questions that the agency is asking, 7 to be exact. An organization or a driver or an industry stakeholder can answer one or all of those 7 questions, or they can just provide their experiences. The interesting part about this particular comment period is it's just a conversation starter. It's non-rulemaking. It's the agency saying, hey, we know that you have the information that we don't have because we're not truck drivers. So they're just asking for information, and I sure hope that drivers decide that it's time to make a comment about this and maybe use their voices to move that regulatory dial. We do have.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
No, I'm. It's funny because this is huge. I think it's long overdue when it comes to the accountability, the regulations that need to be on those who actually delay, more or less the movement of freight, as well as could get in the way of the finances that truck drivers need to make in the timely fashion that they have during the week, during the time that OTR drivers are out every 2 to 3 weeks. But it's funny if you and I don't get enough comments when it comes to the Federal Register, let's just go to social media and start copying and pasting and throw
No,
them in under
okay.
different names.
I'm not above it. I'm not above it. I'm really not, because you see some great things out there on social media and on driver forums and even on platforms like this where drivers have real ideas and real solutions. So it's important that that type of information be conveyed back to the federal regulators. Now we do have a little bit more time on in regard to this, where it's non-rulemaking, September 9th actually. To have our voices heard in regard to this. So I really would implore all drivers and industry stakeholders to go out there and make a comment, because this is a real issue. And I think it's an issue that the agency has to push themselves
Mhm.
to ask themselves, hey, do we regulate this sector of the industry? Because up to this point, the answer's always been no. And, they might have to reconsider that. And that was actually a pretty candid conversation that I had with some agency officials that, they have to start looking at some of these fringe operations a little differently.
Couldn't agree more. Number four.
So, number four is one that's very, very interesting. So, number four is an exemption request that UPS, or the United Parcel Service, has submitted, asking to be exempt from two very specific sections of the new driver training requirements that are set to come out in February 2020. So they want to continue using driver trainers that have less than 2 years of experience, and they do not want to have to register each one of their training locations on the training provider registry. So this is a really interesting topic, and one that I believe drivers should be very, very interested in making a comment on, because it could be an interesting landscape, to say the least, an interesting precedent that could be set if this exemption request was to be granted. But we don't have time to delay on this, because this exemption request comment period closes on July 19th. So that's the end of next week, and we really, really have to work hard to ensure that that these types of precedents aren't set, because we all know that training is a real issue in our industry.
It absolutely is. And you see on social media all the time the complaints, excuse me, of those who can't even back a truck in during when it comes to truck stops or back it into the dock, etc. Thankfully, there's a lot of great truckers out there that are more than happy to assist, especially those who are new into the industry, been driving for less than a month, etc. But at the same time, I think what's interesting, especially going into next February 2020, is we move from the discretionary period of a trainer saying you're good to go because I say you are, versus going through a specific process and procedure when it comes to time on the road, time behind the wheel, etc. So this is a huge topic. Definitely, as you are doing right now, encouraging drivers to get a part of the conversation. Like you said, this could be a slippery slope, in my professional opinion, if the right decision is not made.
Correct.
So all of this right now, Andrea, I can't thank you enough for diving into these four important topics, sharing specifically what they're about, as well as a time frame by which we have the opportunity to let our voices be heard across the industry. Drivers, you got to get a part of this. We're going to drop all the links in the comment thread so you can find the information very simply, and take action immediately. On top of that, this is a segue into what we call Truck Boss Show Extras. Andrea has been so kind with her time, and with our entire team has dove much deeper into these topics, shared even more specific. So be looking for those in our news feeds on Facebook, as well as on our feed on YouTube, Instagram, and more. Andrea, from all of us at the Truck Boss Show, big thank you as always, and we'll see you in the next segment.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.